Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome to Vandy247 Live alongside Luke Wyatt. I'm Billy Derrick here on the 440 Sports Network. Today we're talking little Vandy hoops after the loss last night to Auburn, and then we'll look ahead to Saturday's matchup with Tennessee and just take a look at where this team is at. We will check out the mailbag, and again, if you're watching live, feel free to chime in on the chat room and type in a comment or question. We'll get to that. I know I put it up a little bit late, but we will still try to get to your questions if you've got them in the chat or in the mailbag as well. Before we get to all of that, though, I want to get to the wash house. Are you dreading laundry days? It seems like time to do the things that you truly enjoy. Let the laundry professionals at the wash house take care of that for you. They've got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Luke, good morning. What's going on?
Good morning. Another rainy day in Nashville, a rainy night in Memorial last night.
Yeah, man, it was raining all day yesterday, and I was still impressed by the crowd. I think it was a little over 1,000 short of a sellout at Memorial last night. Obviously, a lot of Auburn fans, but I think, Luke, you are slowly, seeing Vanderbilt fans come back to the gym. It wasn't, I don't think that was like Kentucky, the Big Blue Nation takeover. Probably more similar to Tennessee, the amount they had in there. Yeah. But good atmosphere. Not a good start for Vanderbilt, getting down 15-0. I think it was 19-4 at one point, but they went on a little spurt there to close the half, cut it to 2. And then the second half, they took the lead, Luke. They took the lead by 2, and but Auburn was just too much. There's a reason they're the number 1 team in the country, and I know you were in the building last night. What were your impressions from that? And what did you learn, if anything? Because I told Joey last night, I don't think I really learned anything new about this team. They fought. This wasn't going to be a blowout of any proportion. But interested on your view of that game, especially considering it was the number 1 team in the country.
Well, the worst, I've said this before about in football and basketball. It's a lot of times it's not who you're playing, it's when you play them. And coming off their first conference loss at home to Florida, you were going to get a ticked off, focused basketball team. And that's what happened. And that's why the start, part of the reason now, part of it was our turnovers, but I think Auburn started the game with their hair on fire. And when you get behind 15-0, I don't care who you're playing. Even getting back in the game requires so much energy that winds up beating you on the back end. We wound up getting back into the game by halftime. We're only down 2, but again, you can't spot the number 1 team in the country 15 points and expect to beat them, no matter who it is. So that was the main thing. It's when you play them. If they had beaten Florida by 30, I think last night would have been different. I think you'd have had a 1 or 2 possession game there at the end. The mentality you have to go and we talk about it all the time, Billy, what a grind this conference is. I mean, think about it. We're going through 6 straight ranked teams. Only our final 2 are against non-ranked opponents. I don't know of anybody else having to do that. Any other conference, any other teams. It's just, and for our kids to stay in there and hang in there and only lose it by a dozen, like you said, we didn't learn anything. It was kind of what we thought it would be.
Yeah, and Byington after the game said that we're not that far off. We're not that far away. And obviously, in a game like that, you'd probably like to have a Kajani Wright in there, rim protecting. That game last night was and the Florida game, I think, were two indicators that, yeah, this team needs a little bit more rim protection if they do want to end up beating teams like that. I know they beat Tennessee at home. I still don't think Tennessee's not on the level of an Auburn or Florida. Like Auburn, Florida, and Alabama to me are a notch above, your Tennessees, your Kentuckys, your Mississippi States, teams like that. And it was pretty clear to me that, Auburn coming in here was a different level. Vanderbilt hadn't seen a team like that in Memorial. You could probably say Tennessee's the closest, but Auburn's even, I think, maybe a decent bit better than Tennessee. I know that was a 3-point game in Auburn, but it's just a different level of athlete. Like when Chaney Johnson, Luke, goes, on a 9-0 run by himself, and he's not even, he's probably their third or fourth guy. That's when you know that this is going to be hard to win tonight. And some of their step backs early, whether it was Pettiford or Denver Jones, like their depth is ridiculous. And the fact that Vandy took a 2-point lead there in the second half, you clean up a couple of more things. They were 3 of 17 from 3. You hit, you go maybe 7 of 17. That's a different game. I know hindsight's 20/20, but I think these games, we're starting to learn that this team is not that far away, and Byington's going to make the adjustments that he can to do whatever it takes to beat teams like this.
We are an older team, okay? But Auburn has guys, Cardwell, when he first came to Auburn, I didn't have gray hair. He's been there forever.
He has.
Kid's got to be 26, 27 years old. I don't understand. But, I know this is finally going to level itself off after COVID and all the transfer portal stuff. It'll finally start leveling itself off and go the other way. But I felt like Auburn is so experienced. Those kids have played so much basketball. They're almost like a G League team. They really are. They are really good. And the only reason we got back in the game, I felt like they kind of settled when they got the lead and started jacking up a bunch of threes. But once they settled back in and started going inside the broom and penetrating and stuff, I knew we were in tough trouble. Sometimes you just got to tip your hat and say the team's better than you are. And I agree with your comparison about Tennessee. Tennessee defensively is as good as anybody else, but their offense is not as consistent as a team like Auburn. Auburn can beat you in so many different ways. I look forward to these next 2 challenges. I think one of them probably won't go well at all. Not sure which one, but, when you play 2 back-to-back road games against 2 top 15 teams, you're probably going to have one game that is just not close, and then the other fight your rear end off. So looking forward to that a little bit to see how we do.
Right now, they're still that 11 seed line. They're kind of going back and forth from, last team in to last 4 buys. That's kind of where they've been the last couple of weeks here, Luke. And I know right now is when the time it's not too early anymore. Vanderbilt they're squarely on the bubble. As you look at the schedule, I know we've talked a lot about this, and I think that's a good point you make about Tennessee and Kentucky, because look, I think they match up well. I'm not worried matchup-wise a whole lot. Now, there's certain matchups within those games I don't like, but overall, they proved they could match up with Tennessee and Kentucky at home. I know that was now, over a month ago. But I agree with you. I think maybe they snag one of those. But, again, you're not expecting it, right? So, but I think to me, and you probably agree, the Ole Miss and Missouri games at home, and throw Arkansas in there. Arkansas's at home too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so those 3 home games right there, I'm not saying you should get all 3, but obviously if you do, you're in the tournament.
Yeah.
But, if you only get 2 of those, it's going to come down to Georgia at home, or Georgia on the road to end the season.
Yeah.
But then you've got SEC tournament. So Ole Miss, Missouri, Arkansas, and Georgia. Those are the games I look at that. Those are your opportunities. Not that Tennessee and Kentucky aren't opportunities, and A&M, but and we never know. Maybe the wins come against an A&M or a Tennessee on Saturday. And they end up losing to Arkansas or Ole Miss. You don't know. But that's how I look at it, Luke. Those home games, you're gonna have to hold serve at home. Those are your better chances, obviously, as opposed to going on the road.
Well, we got 7 left. We got 3 more at home. Win 2 of those and pick up one of those 4 on the road. And again, it's not going to be who we think. If you map it out like you just said, you say you got to beat this team, that team. It never works that way. It didn't in football. We lost to Georgia State and beat Alabama. No, you don't never have that on your bingo card. So I just feel like we can win any of these next 7 and we can lose all 7. Before the season started, I had us finishing around 17-14. But this team has got a lot more stick-to-itiveness than I thought they would have. They have Coach Byington. I don't know how you go out and get 10 or 11 guys to work and play as hard as they play. They don't play great all the time, and there's some things that they're limited on, obviously the size and stuff. But, man, I don't know, Billy. You go back and tell me a game where these kids hadn't really laid it on the line except for Oklahoma. I mean, all the others felt like, they played as hard as they could play.
I'm with you. I mean, that Drake game, that wasn't that was just Drake playing really well. And I think Vanderbilt might have had some tired legs there, but other than that, yeah. But I mean, you get into SEC play, I'm with you. Outside of Oklahoma, Mississippi State maybe, but Edwards was hurt. But I mean, they've laid it out on the line, and the thing is, they've had to win these games. Any of these, right? LSU and South Carolina are apparently the 2 worst teams in the league. Those were dogfights, and they had to go on the road at LSU and fight that one to the death. They had to grit it out against South Carolina there at home, and every other team really has been, a really good team, and I think they can beat anybody. Luke, like they could have. I think all things go well, they could have beaten Auburn last night, but that's the thing. There's a lot that has to go right against a team like Auburn, and even a team like Tennessee, like this Saturday. You're going to have a lot that has to go right. But somebody after the game told me, this was a really good point. There's a lot of SEC teams that would have lost tonight in that building in Memorial. So that's they've got the attention of the SEC. Bruce Pearl after the game said that he's a top half coach in the league. And that kind of made my eyes and ears perk up a little bit. I hadn't heard anybody say that. And there's 16 coaches in the league, and most of them are really good coaches. So, he's a top half coach in the league, according to Bruce Pearl. And by the way, Bruce Pearl's I know Vandy fans give him a bad rap, but I've always been a big fan of his. And he said a lot of good things about Mark Byington after the game. But I'm with you, Luke, and I think what the position I'm in right now is that I trust Mark Byington to figure it out. I don't quite know how they're gonna get into the tournament, but I believe that it goes back to the beginning of the season too. Like they said, this is not a rebuild. This is not a rebuild. And he was talking about how the NCAA tournament's addictive, right? And so he wanted to come into Vanderbilt to make the tournament right away. And if you go back his first year at James Madison, he was picked, I think, 10th out of 10 teams. In I forget what conference they were, maybe Colonial or whatever conference they were in. And they ended up in a tie, I think, for first place in that league. So, Luke, it's really impressive, and I think the point we're at right now too is that whether they make the tournament or not, this is a success of a season. It might be a disappointment if they don't make it, but let's throw out the door any of the negative comments if they don't make the tournament. I mean, we were thinking 6-12. I think at least a majority. I was. That's where I think you said that a couple of weeks ago too. The fact they're even on the bubble right now says a lot about his coaching style and how much experience he has as a coach.
Well, we talked about Vanderbilt could have beaten Auburn last night. Auburn had to escape to beat South Carolina, and South Carolina hasn't won a game in the league. That just shows you how strong. I mean, we always you hear it every year. This is the strongest it's ever been. I'm telling you, I'm an old man. I've watched Southeastern Conference basketball since the F Troop and Vanderbilt. This is by far the toughest the SEC has ever been and probably ever will be again. Because, like I said, with COVID years finally being over with, the league may come back down a little bit. I think a coach like Pearl, who has done a great job developing his roster and having veterans and seeing the value of having age on your team. It is age. I don't care if the old things of the Fab Five type thing is over with. What Calipari used to do at Kentucky is over with. You're not going to get 4 or 5 stars out of high school and win anymore in this league. You have to have experience, depth, and grown men out there playing, because you're going against grown men every night. And we have, again, I am really excited about where we're at, because the opportunity is right in front of us. We control our own destiny. A lot of times you have to hope somebody else loses and this and that. And it's and I do think this too. One other thing, Billy, I think the tournament, and we always said last year it didn't matter at all. This year, there's going to be 3 or 4 teams that aren't separated by much. And how they do in the SEC tournament may determine. Let's say, for instance, we only win 2 of our last 7, and we go into the tournament. We need to win probably 1 or 2. Whereas in the past, it probably wouldn't have mattered. But if if the Georgia, the Oklahoma, and the Arkansas, people that are right on that bubble with you, you got to hope they're losing their games if you lose a game. Just like last night, I was glad to see that Bama beat Arkansas and Georgia got beat by A&M.
Bama beat Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And then last night, A&M beating Georgia. That's got to continue to happen, because we've got some tough these next few games. Anything can happen. We can still, we can upset one of those teams. We really can.
Oh yeah. We're going to start getting to some questions here, and I may have a couple of questions for Luke as well. But Willie says, Joey said Byington said the guys were fatigued. Do we have the most non-conditioned team in the SEC? The only guy that played 30 minutes was McLaughlin. No, I don't think they have the most non-conditioned team in the SEC. You're playing Auburn, and the thing about it is, with Vanderbilt's rotation, I told this to somebody last night too. I think the strength of their team is how they sub, right? I know people get upset with the subs and the Huffman just came in for Edwards and all that, but you can't play Edwards 36. And I know I went into this the other a couple of weeks ago too, but I've learned that these guys have roles, right? Edwards is not he's not a lockdown defender like a Huffman is. Huffman's really good on defense. So is Tanner. So there's strengths and weaknesses that these guys have. They're not the most non-conditioned team in the SEC, but they were fatigued. And I think, if anything, Luke, I do worry about that a little bit here down the stretch. And you may see Byington elect to not practice as much, or have as physical practices here down the stretch. But I'm interested to see a little bit of the fatigue factor. How much more does that come into play in the second half? But again, it's easy to overreact. You played the number 1 team in the country, who is really good. So that makes, that can make you look fatigued.
Well, Jason Edwards, you talk about his minutes having to be limited because he has to work. He's a smallish guy, and he has to work hard to get open, and he has to work really hard to try to defend. So, they're going to be fatigued. But part of and you can ask Coach Byington this next time you talk to him. When he talks about fatigue, I think part of it's mental fatigue. With it being such a grind, and you get these emotional wins, and then you get the tough losses on the road, it wears on you emotionally too. And you got to turn around and play again so quick a lot of times that it's just not only physical fatigue, but mental fatigue.
Let's see. Seek and Destroy says this team is very close to being a top 15 team. They had an off shooting night, period. I attribute the fatigue to going down 15-0, plus Auburn coming off the loss to Florida didn't help, on to Tennessee. That's a good point there, Luke. Auburn, coming off the Florida loss, that they were going to be ready, but they're also ready because they respected Vanderbilt. They knew what Vanderbilt had done against Tennessee and Kentucky. Bruce Pearl, after the game, said this game had our full attention, right? And so I think, if you would have heard that comment before the game, I think you would have known Auburn was going to come out ready to play, and that's exactly what they did. But yeah, Vandy had an off shooting night, but the margins are small for them. We've known that, and you can say that about a lot of nights. Teams have off shooting nights, but Auburn was a part of that. Auburn defensively did a really good job on Vanderbilt.
Yeah, no doubt. We, right now, Billy, like I said, we've got 7 left. we win 2. We probably got to win 2 in the tournament. We win 3. I think we're in. It's that simple.
I'm with you. And at 2 in the tournament. Yeah, 1 because they'll probably be playing, most likely be playing on that Wednesday night. Or what that Wednesday. It's not just a night anymore. That that those roll all day. You're probably playing Wednesday. That first game will not do you any good. That's the second win you'd probably have to get in the SEC. But I do think it should matter, and it probably will matter more this year. This is the best the league has ever been. Vandy fan 615, thoughts on the policy to prevent the court storm? This is from the mailbag. Thoughts on the policy to prevent the court storm now that we just saw Auburn fans all over the court after the game last night? I don't know if you saw that picture Joey posted. There were Auburn fans after the game, which was a little weird, but
yeah, there won't be any fine for that.
Yeah. Well, I think what the guy's asking is that you're right. There won't be fined, but the fact that it's Auburn fans instead of Vanderbilt fans.
Well, they could have kept them. I don't think anybody anticipated that happening. I've never seen it in my life, so I don't know.
Well, that's the policy. I do wonder if they revise it. If you're a visiting fan base, you can't be on the floor. I mean, maybe it's that easy. I mean, this is only for or
maybe they try to make $1 million. They thought you're on the floor. It's $1 million to Auburn.
Oh man, yeah, but that's the thing about it. They had to do something. Yeah, they had, they were not going to be fined again. And say, look, I know it's a bad look with the Auburn fans on the floor, but the other part of it is I think we're done with the large fan bases taking over Memorial. I don't, maybe Arkansas. I'm sure they'll bring some people, Ole Miss, but I don't think Ole Miss and Arkansas will have the amount that Tennessee and Auburn did. So no. I don't, you probably won't have to worry about it. But the other side of it is if you do, I don't think there'll be any more court storms. So that's the other weird part of it. If you would have beaten Auburn last night, Luke, that you're probably getting fined. I don't think that 1 minute countdown was gonna be much for them.
No, I want to go back a little bit if we can, Billy, to the Texas game. That was the best atmosphere we've had with 90% Vanderbilt fans that we've had in a long time. I said the ceiling for that gym with Vanderbilt fans now, knowing the fans we've lost over the years of the 7 lean years we had in basketball, 10,000 is probably where we can get. I still don't think we'll ever get 14,000 in that gym consistently again like we used to. Before you were born, Billy, all that, you've heard it, I'm sure, from all us old folks. But it used to be 15,626 every night for conference games. And the visiting team had very few in there. You couldn't even hear them, didn't even notice them. Even with Kentucky, even years ago, they only had maybe 1,000 or so in there. Things now, the way tickets are distributed and all that. And everyone, we talk about it all the time. Everybody wants to come to Nashville. It's the best city in the conference. That works for you in recruiting, but it works against you when it comes to stuff like this.
All right, to wrap it up, and I know, and my apologies if we got the mailbag out a little too late. Had a busy late night. But we will, we'll have plenty more roundtable episodes here, especially coming down the stretch. And again, if you guys have any chat room questions as well, feel free to get those in. I want to get your take on baseball, Luke. I had Joe Healy on Monday. He does a really good job, and he talked a lot about the coaching changes with Jason King and Ty Blankmeyer, and how the fact that Tim Corbin made a decision to stop what he was doing, to say, hey, what we're doing right now is not cutting it. It's not working, and made a tough decision with Mike Baxter. And I think there's a little bit of mystery with this, with this team. I think you've got a high floor. You always got to have a high floor, right, with this team. But I think there's more potential this year as opposed to last year. And I heard from somebody associated with the team that last year the leaders were not the best players on the team. They weren't the most talented. But this year, the best players on the team are the leaders of the team as well. I think that's a big difference, whether it's Vastine or Austin or some of the pitchers, J.D. Thompson, Miller Green, even he's a younger guy, but as a leader, I'm excited about this season, Luke, but also like, I don't really know. Maybe we could see a totally different offensive approach. We could see with Blake Meyer coaching the infielders, do we see better defense and pitching, you've still got Scott Brown there. There wasn't obviously a change needed there, but I'm interested in your thoughts on the baseball season and what you think this team could look like this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. We're a bit of a wild card because I'm not sure, starting pitching looks to be set. I'm not sure about McIlvain's performance so far leading up to the season, but the other two guys, JD and Boker, look like they're definitely slotted in there to start. I know we got a couple of guys hurt right at the beginning. I don't like that. Mancini and I think Brody Johnston may be out for this weekend. I don't know. Maybe one of them could play. I think they both have hand injuries of some type. But I feel like this year, I always look at the depth. And I think, because there's been times when if we get an injury or so, we're really in trouble. We have a lot of pieces that can interchange, infielders that can play outfield and vice versa. I'm going to give you a key to this team that I think is going to be huge, and that's the play of Colin Bartsey. We have a catcher, we've always had great catchers, and you knew who number one was in the past 8 years. Colin's definitely number one on this team, but he's going to have to perform. He can't be a 230 hitter to go along with catching a good game and keeping runners close and that type of thing. I think that's going to make a difference in a lot of these close games that we play. I do think that you're correct when you talk about the hitting, the way we're going to approach hitting. They've already changed the way Holcomb swings, evidently, try to cut down on his strikeouts. But I'm going to watch our power numbers because we all know there's 3 or 4 teams in this league that swing different sticks than everybody else. I can tell you that for a fact, even though some people don't believe it. So you got to keep up with that. You really do. And you either you're able to do that with great pitching or you're able to do that by matching it with power of your own. But I think this team is definitely a NCAA team again. We'll keep that streak alive. And I think they could get to Omaha with no injuries and the right breaks.
Yeah, I'm with you. We'll see this weekend. You're going to be able to have a good look at the team. They'll start Friday night at Grand Canyon. It's at Grand Canyon's home park, so that'll be a tough team to play against at their place, 7 o'clock on the MLB Network. And then Saturday night, prime time, 7 o'clock MLB Network as well against Nebraska. And then Sunday afternoon against UC Irvine at 1 o'clock. And then they'll have a midweek couple of games, Tuesday, Wednesday against Air Force the following week. And then they'll have a 3-game weekend series against St. Mary's at home. So Vanderbilt baseball is back. Luke, it's crazy having it back. It feels like with this basketball season, like last year, I told this to Joe, last year, I don't think there were a ton of people, sad that basketball was winding down. I mean, after that Presbyterian game, I think there were some people starting to look ahead to baseball, and it's unfortunate you had a baseball season the way you did. But, I do think I heard a quote from Tim Corbin. He was on a Sirius XM show this morning and or yesterday morning, and he brought up the fact that he can feel a new energy. It's just good energy around campus. He said Diego Pavia is helping out with practice. He looked over there one practice. He was helping pick up machines after practice and pick up balls. And, I think whether it's Pavia or whether it's the NIL money, there's a difference in this academic year than the previous year. I mean, it's very clear that there's a new energy, and I'll be interested to see if that carries over into baseball. And Chris made a good point too. He was at the banquet. It's not even called the Vandy Fest, they called it. Right. And that served as the banquet. And he said guys were, coming out in jeans and cowboy boots and their jerseys and coming out to applauses. And it was different than the formal banquet, that was cool and Vandy fans loved. But maybe there's some change in Corbin here that we're seeing that maybe he thought was needed. Who knows?
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is they've kind of let their hair down a little bit. The team may resemble more of what Jonathan Vastine is, if that makes sense to everybody. Free spirit, edgy kind of guy. Now, make no mistake, Tim Corbin's still going to keep discipline and respect in this program. But I think he's seen where the game's going, and he's making some concessions.
Well, and it tells you that he's not anywhere close to saying, "I'm out, guys." You know, I'll see you. He's a baseball lifer. He's a Vandy lifer, and I'm excited. It'll be interesting to see what this team brings again this weekend. They will be out in Phoenix. I would assume they're already out there, or maybe leaving today. So, Luke, sorry about the late mailbag. I know we'll have a chance to get more questions out in the future with these episodes. But anything you wanna leave us with?
No, just I'm excited about baseball starting, but I think this basketball team's got a lot of games left to play.
I'm with you. They obviously got Tennessee at noon on Saturday in Knoxville. Joey and I will be making the trip out there. You can watch that on SEC Network. So who knows? Who knows what happens these next couple of games? Couple of tough road matchups against top 15 teams. That's Luke Wyatt. I'm Billy Derrick. This podcast has always been free. We plan for it to stay that way. Give us a review and a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you're listening, and haven't subscribed to Vandy247.com yet. Please do. 30% off annual deal going on right now on Vandy247.com. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, give us your comments and all that. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chrisley at chrisley70@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.